guidance. The number to call in to the Pink Chakra Psychic Line is 888-235-7374.
Psychic radio, holistic radio, spiritual radio. This is AchieveRadio.com. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/AchieveRadio.
Hi, I'm Anne-Marie, and thank you for joining me today on Tarot Joy. We are having a really unique guest. His name is Joshua Shapiro, and he is a crystal skull explorer. Joshua has been involved with a crystal skull since 1983 when he saw one made out of amethyst in Northern California. And he felt such a strong connection with this artifact that since that time he has devoted his life and resources to sharing the best information he can about these crystalline artifacts, which he will be explaining to us in such wonderful detail today. And I do want to say that he has written 2 great books. One of them is the well-known Crystal Skulls World, including Mitchell-Hedges Crystal Skull of Love. And those are places where they've been in the British Museum. Crystal Skulls, Synergy. I'll let him explain that to me. Hello, Joshua. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on your show today.
You're welcome. Well, I am so excited to hear about what's going on with the different aspects of your crystal skulls. And so I guess the first thing is, tell me what crystal skulls are and why are they so special, Joshua?
Okay, well, as the term says, it's a skull made out of crystal, or actually the definition today is various gemstones. And it's in the shape of a human bone skull, or it could be like an alien skull, an animal skull, a stylized skull. And basically there are 4 different types of crystal skulls that are defined within the crystal skull community. So there are ones that are very old, which people call ancient skulls, which I define as being made like 2,000 years or older. They could be 5,000, 10,000, 100,000, a million. We don't really have a scientific technique that I'm aware of that you can take a crystal skull and be able to date actually when it was carved. So for those older ones, it mostly has to do with working with people who are sensitive, who feel the energies, because I believe that the skulls record everything that happens around it, and the frequencies and the energies. And then there's what's called an old crystal skull, which would be one made over 100 years to say 2,000 years ago, which would be done in a much more primitive way than some of these very old or ancient skulls. We have modern carvers making crystal skulls now, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of them, which I think is only happening because there are so many people who are feeling drawn to have it as a sacred tool to use in their own spiritual evolution and growth. And then the last category of crystal skulls is, when you get to 65, you forget the words. Apported, that's the word I'm looking for. An apported skull, which means it comes from basically nowhere. The one which we personally have We were invited to see this medium when we lived in the Seattle area, and he had come out of his mouth not only this crystal skull, but other objects which he claims were coming from spirit, that they were using him as a vessel, and there was like an energy vortex in his mouth. So literally, where was this coming from? So we have different theories about that, but that's basically the 4 crystal skulls. Then you asked me another question, how are they used or what's their purpose? Was that the other part?
Well, let's start out with, I am interested in do each of the crystal skulls emit a different frequency? Like based on, you said you had some in amethyst and others in, different kinds of crystal. I know that part of the spiritual world and part of the theory of crystal is that it's kind of like a recorder, like you said, that it records in grooves all of the different things that are happening around it. And I'm anxious to hear about what you say about using it as a tool for premonition. But do they, based on the different kinds of crystals that these skulls have, emit different frequencies, Joshua?
Yeah, so here we have an example of a rose quartz skull. This was one that we had carved by a Indian carver. So you can see it's kind of like human shaped. Okay.
Yes.
And each crystal skull, this is what I believe happens. This is what they've told me, okay? Which means that what I'm saying is that once a crystal skull is created, even one like this, which is a brand new one, it eventually becomes a portal for different living, I call it a living consciousness, because, it could be from a galactic being, it could be a spiritual being that's never had a physical lifetime, it could be from a nature spirit, many different places, but some type of living consciousness which uses the skull as like a communication device. So as a result of this, because I believe that different intelligences or spirits work through the skull, then each one is going to have a different and unique vibrational frequency. Like for example, this particular one was just recently carved by Indian carver that we work with, and it's going to a very special friend. And my life partner Katrina has been working with it, and I can already tell that as a result of it sitting with our personal crystal skulls, that its vibration has changed from when I held it in the beginning. So it's like it's awakening. So my experience has been that every crystal skull that I've encountered is unique. And it also encapsulates a portion of, we call it the keeper or the guardian, because I don't believe we own these skulls. I think they choose us, we don't choose them. Or the intelligence that's working through the skull is choosing us, and recognizing that by working with that individual or that organization or that group, that the vibrational frequencies which are possible to come through the crystal skull will work in alignment with whoever is the keeper or guardian or guardians. So, but what I've found again, based on your question, is each one is unique, and it seems to incorporate, and I'll be showing you another crystal skull a little bit later, which is my personal skull that came to me back in 1999. I know that there are aspects of myself that it's incorporated. So it's kind of like
Absolutely.
We become a team. We become a team.
Right.
And there are aspects of the energy, because I'm looking at this skull right now as I'm talking to you, that have assisted and helped me in my spiritual evolution, or a lot of times, like even like he's talking to me right now and he's saying, yeah, Dad, tell her about, how we help with, like when you're doing spiritual work, we create a special energetic environment around you. And that's what I feel like he's doing for me right now, so that as you ask your questions, I'm clear in my explanation, that the information coming out, that your listeners will understand etc. So that's the perception that I have with the different crystal skulls.
Okay, I just have a question. Why is it, I mean, there's many people that get crystals, right?
Yes.
Um, what in the historical accounts made the shape of a skull be more of a channeling than any other shape? Is there any reasoning behind that?
Well, the basic question you're asking me is it's not so much the material that it's made from, but that somebody took a stone and felt inspired to make it into the shape of like a human
Right,
bone
the
skull.
energy was already in that stone.
Right. Because, there are some people who, if they looked at a crystal skull because it looks like a bone skull, they would go like this, okay? Because it reminds them of
Yes,
death, which is not what the
that has
crystal
a bad
skull,
connotation.
right,
Right.
which is not what I believe that they were created for, their original intention. Like, for example, as I'm looking at Portal de Luz right now, I feel like the crystal skulls were used to store specific vibrational frequencies, wisdom, and knowledge. So this could be part of the reason why some of the very old skulls are coming out now, because they recognize, and I think there's nobody listening right now that can argue at least this point, the world is seeing challenges like we've never seen before, okay? And I'll be talking more about that later. And so, in a way, humanity is crying out for help, and many of the crystal skulls have started to resurface, I think, within the last 30 to 50 years. Like they've been found near ancient ruins, or some people tell me in Mexico, where many have been coming out, they kick the ground and a crystal skull rose out of the ground. Okay, because I think many of the Mesoamerican cultures that this was a sacred tool, just like some Native
Like
Americans
Day
have
of the
built.
Dead, it's all based around skulls.
Yeah.
It's a
Okay.
symbol that is very in sync with them.
Right. But also think about, why do we have this shape in our human body? Some higher being, some higher intelligence said, okay, for souls to experience the physical reality, what's going to be the best shape or form? Because even people who are UFO contactees, even if the galactics, I call them galactics, not ETs, the galactics they're meeting don't look like us, but still they're in a humanoid form in many cases. They have a head, 2 arms, 2 legs. Okay,
Right.
so the shape of the skull is very special to any individual in humanity in their spiritual evolution. It's kind of like the same situation like with a pyramid. Okay, if you go a third of the way down from the top of a pyramid that's in perfect proportions, it rejuvenates metal, it has special frequencies of energy. So I believe the same thing is true when you start to take a gemstone and put it into the shape of like a bone skull. Like there is an ancient skull known as the Mitchell-Hedges skull, which you briefly mentioned in my intro, that is an almost exact duplicate of a human bone skull. And a lot of people, for a long time, until Martin Carvers had diamond tip tools to make these skulls, they weren't sure how primitive people could have made something of such a hard substance so precisely, okay, because they didn't have these advanced tools. But anyway, getting back to the shape of the skull, for me, I believe that this higher consciousness that created humanity, which also created every aspect of our body, that they specifically created a skull in that shape because it was able to receive cosmic knowledge and information from the universe. It's something about that shape that on, let's say, the subconscious or superconscious is able to receive this information and knowledge. And then as we start going and working with our spiritual evolution and growth, we start to open up channels that we can receive all that knowledge and information that's available to us. And it's because of the shape of the skull. So I think,
I would add to that most professional actors and singers know that as the voice resonates, you're supposed to feel it in the temples vibrating. So that would
mhm.
go along with the shape of the cranium being a receptive tool because it resonates the voice, and when you reach that point of singing professionally or speaking professionally, you're supposed to feel it resonate and vibrate in the temples. So that makes perfect sense that it would be that our skull is a receptive shape
Right.
or
So if that's
whatever.
true, and then you're working with quartz crystal, which is a transmitter and receiver
Mhm.
for a multitude of frequencies of energies that we can
Mhm.
receive that could be coming from all different levels and dimensions and different beings. It becomes a very powerful tool. And the other thing that I notice with the crystal skulls is when I work with them, they have a tendency to reflect back to the individual working with them about who they are, and maybe even gifts they don't even know that they have, and it may even reflect back things that they chose to work on in this lifetime, challenges. Okay, I don't call
Right.
it like a person may have a problem or a big challenge. It's not really a weakness. The soul, we have to understand that our soul, before we came down here, everything that goes on in our life, we planned it. And we planned it so that we could learn and we could grow and it could make us stronger and it could bring out our gifts. Because, if everything was so easy, life would be boring. So we picked one of the most difficult classrooms in God's infinite universe, or Creator's infinite universe to come. And especially right now, we are being challenged to the hilt because, we don't know what we're being told, especially through the major media, which seems to be doing a great job. And I'm sorry, I don't want to make a judgment on this, but I know there's a lot of people who agree. They're telling lies and they're not telling people what's really going on. And if you pick some subject they don't want people to know about, then they censor you. So this is really, we're in a time now, and that's why I think the crystal skulls are coming out, where we're seeing the truth, but the truth encompasses both, the magnificent and the light and the peace and the harmony, which is why people go and they develop their spirituality, because that's what's deep inside. But at the same time, we're also seeing things that have been going on, which some people may say horrific, which I won't discuss, because it causes more fear and panic, and all of that's going away. And I'll talk about how I know about that a little bit later. So the skulls become a tool to awaken consciousness in people, to reflect back who they are, divine children of God, their gifts, their abilities, maybe even their purpose in life. So it's a fantastic tool, and that it's in the shape like a human bone skull in particular, I think enhances the ability of the crystal rather than working with a crystal that has no form to it. If it's
It
like
resonates the
us,
vibration. It
right,
resonates the vibration.
right, and it's
Yeah.
empowering. Okay, but at the same time, what I found with different crystal skulls, especially some that are very old, is they do not decide which energy are we going to record. Are we going to record the greatness of humanity or man's inhumanity to man? So there have some crystal skulls, especially one I can think of, I saw in Mexico, which knocked me for a loop, which I know, who knows if it was used in sacrifices or whatever. So humanity, I believe humanity was gifted the skulls by higher consciousness or galactics long, long ago. And we decide, just like with everything else, how will we use this tool? Will we use it to benefit all of humanity, or will we use it for power and greed? So the very, very old skulls, what I believe is they have like a protection system where they cannot be misused. Like there's a crystal ball, Dr. Brown's crystal ball. Most people, I don't think, know this. That came out, I think it was in the 60s, was found under the water near Bimini in a large pyramid that was uncovered because there was a storm. And Dr. Brown went into this pyramid and got this powerful ball. And actually, in this hand, that ball was placed, and it's still energetically, I feel it in my right hand. And I heard that when it was exposed to, my friend had these two little crystal faces. One of them talked to me and said, "Oh, we're connected to a specific galactic race." So I don't know, maybe that sounds crazy, but that's what I heard. When it was in the presence of those two skulls, the ball shattered. And it meant that, I think what it meant is the individual who has it, because it was something from Atlantis that was used very powerfully, he was misusing it, and the ball was not going to allow that to take place. So I'm glad I had the chance. And the other thing, see, part of the understanding of the crystal skulls, and I'm going to have to apologize because I'm going to tell you stories. This is the only way to explain it, is I had a chance to work with this Atlantean crystal ball's energy versus the energy of the crystal skulls. And what I find that was different is the Atlantean ball, and maybe this is because I studied to be a computer programmer. That's, what I went to school, and I got my degree in that. And thank God I did that, because working with the computer and all these systems and everything has helped me tremendously to do my spiritual work and talk to people and share all kinds of information. But anyway, what I felt with the Atlantean crystal ball is that it was programmed by the people in Atlantis. It wasn't alive. Whereas for me, with the crystal skulls, this living consciousness, it's alive. Like, when Portal's talking to me, it's like I'm talking to a person. This is life. Whereas this ball was very powerful with its energy, but it was like some kind of advanced minds programmed it. So the same thing like with a computer, it interacts, you give it certain information, it comes back with something. That's how the ball did. Is it scanned me and said, okay, I have this person, and then it sent certain energy, and I had certain experiences with it, but it wasn't alive. So that was kind of interesting that I could compare, holding that ball. But that also illustrates one of my spiritual gifts, which is that I feel vibrational frequencies and energy. That's primarily how I do my sessions, is I can project into the person, not interfere in their energy at all, just feel, what is this person like? And I kind of feel what it's like to be them, and I know their strengths and weaknesses. And then, of course...
did you note one of the modern... I don't know if you've ever heard of Bashar.
Oh, yes.
Channel. He was talking about one of the greatest things that every channel and spiritualist needs to remember is that to keep from being bunked and to keep from skeptics saying, oh, that's just a bunch of crap, that perhaps it's about how we explain it happening. And he says it isn't some voodoo. It's more about, just like some people can marathon run, other people can match their energy with whoever or whatever they are speaking or connecting with, be it your crystal skulls. You're matching your energy with it and receiving back the messages. But it seems that it's more about explaining it in a way sometimes that the skeptic can understand better. And I think that what you're doing is great. And I think that, I can see that you are matching your energy perfectly with each skull.
Well, what I find as a sharer of information is that, especially like when you do presentations, is that you just share what you have to share. You're not attached to if one person or 100% is going to accept or believe you. But it doesn't matter. There's always going to be a few people, because I watch it in the audience. They'll be nodding. Yeah, I get it. It's like what I'm saying, they're in total alignment and sync with it. So the key that I tell people, and I kind of got this when I worked with the Mitchell-Hedges skull around the time of the Indiana Jones film. I had a chance to have a session with it because I know the Guardian Bill Holman. and I was interviewed for the Sci-Fi Channel at his house, although they didn't show my interview, but it was interesting working with them. But anyway, let's see, what's the main point I want to make, is that it's kind of like being Johnny Appleseed. You put a message out, you release it, and who it has value for will do something with it. And sometimes some people may come back and ask you some questions, or maybe you're planting seeds with them and then they have experience. Oh yeah, Joshua was talking about that experience that he had. Now I understand what it's about. So it doesn't matter whether a person is spiritual or not. As we share and just be who we are ourselves, we are teachers and students to each other. Like my father was never really into this, yet he would find me these amazing books that had great knowledge and information that changed my understanding of things. So God can work through any individual, whether they're aware of it or not.
Right.
So that's my thought on that. Okay, what's your next question? Hit me. Aries like to be challenged.
Okay, so how do you, so basically we have discussed how the skulls will help humanity in the future. Do you feel that's because of the messages that they bring?
I think there's two ways they're helping humanity. Number one is they're helping the individual who has the opportunity to have the contact and experience with it. And the second thing is I have a story called Crystal Skull Chronicles. So I'm going to use this as what could be another example of what ultimately may be their purpose, okay? So, and this isn't saying that I'm the only one that sees this. It's just I came up with this story to explain this idea. There seems to be certain sets of skulls that work together. Okay, Portal's calling me while I tell this story. I have to hold him. Okay. Oh, he's getting light again. We did this was very interesting. He changes his weight, and we did a special meditation on Friday. A friend who has an ancient skull called Infinity that she received while she was in Mexico. So right before we did the meditation, he became very light, and he just did it again to me as I'm sharing him. Because normally, he's like, I believe, 11 pounds, and I can only hold him for like a minute or two, but because he's made himself lighter, or somebody's giving me more energy to hold him, he's a little bit light. So this is an almost human-sized skull. Portal de Luz is his name. Okay?
Nice.
So,
nice.
But also, I'm showing you different skulls, so you see they're made out of different materials. So Portal de Luz is smoky quartz. And he tells me I'm supposed to tell you a story. You're going to find this very interesting. So while I was in Poland, which is probably like 2004, the person who sponsored us was a medical doctor, but he did, I forget what they called it in Poland, but he used energy through his hands. He had that gift. And so he asked this woman who was like, had a beautiful singing voice, operatic singing voice. And he said, and I don't know why he got this idea, but he said, hold the crystal skull to your throat and sing with it. Now, if you remember, Portal de Luz is kind of a dark or a light shade of gray. But after she finished singing with Portal de Luz, he became totally transparent like clear quartz. So the singing, because I thought about that when you were talking about with the temples and the vibrational speaking or singing. Yeah, so that's what happened with the crystal skull. So that's the other thing that's really cool, as I call myself, or with Katrina and our skulls, we're the Crystal Skull Explorers, is to be totally open at all times to any kind of experience that can kind of happen to you, okay? So this is my problem with the skulls, is I have too many stories, and they just want to come out, and then I told you another story, but I forgot the other one I was telling you about. Give me the keyword and I'll get back into it. Do you remember what I was saying before I talked about this one with the lady?
You were telling me about the singer and the crystal ball, or the crystal skull, and the transparency, and I asked you, how do the skulls help humanity in the future?
Okay. So now we're going to come back to my second answer of that. Thank you.
Okay.
Because I remember it was an important question. So what people believe is there are groups of skulls that need to come together. And in particular, they talk about an original set of 13. Now, I think this comes through some of the indigenous prophecies, like Native American prophecy, or there's a group of Mayans. I met one of the Mayan elders. They talk about 52 skulls, that perhaps they have a set of 13, and there may be 3 other indigenous groups who have a set of 13. So this number of 13 has come up. Okay, so let's assume that there are 13 original skulls that humanity was gifted many hundreds of thousands of years ago, and a very high, pure vibration. So in my story, Crystal Skull Chronicles, it focuses about people looking for one skull in Guatemala, but then a shaman teaches them how to work with that skull, and they're teleported at the end of the story to Alto Paraíso, which is in Brazil, High Paradise. Now, I've been to Alto Paraíso, and what I can tell you is there are 2 things that happened to me when I was there. Number 1, the energy is so wonderful you don't want to leave. Okay, and they even say that if a satellite goes over that area, it could see light being broadcast from the ground because a ton and ton of crystals are there. And the second thing, when I visited, while I was getting to walk into like a small building where I was going to do a presentation about crystal skulls for the local people, you know, and actually I did part of it in Portuguese. For some reason, Portuguese is my second language. I remember, for a brief instant, I went into the future, like I would be there again at some point in the future. And this was a period of time where the United Council of the Earth is meeting in that area. And then I snapped back. So it was like for 1 or 2 moments, I went into the future, I realized what was happening, and then I snapped back. So it was very interesting.
What do you think if you didn't snap back?
No, I would snap back. It's because I'm so dedicated to doing what I came here to do. You know, like there's a lot of people who have great difficulty, especially starseed or star people, or people who are very sensitive energetically, with the madness that's happening on the earth right now, with the emotions, with violence. They want to ascend and get out of here as quickly as possible, okay? Because they're not sure they can deal with this. I'm the opposite. As an Aries, and also who my soul is, which I think is a cosmic wanderer, I'm not leaving here until I finish what I've come here to do. I don't care how challenging and so-called terrible it gets. I'm not leaving. So even if and there's another thing that happened to me, another story, where I was hit by a van when I was living in Las Vegas, and I was in a coma for 3 days. And so I have to jump ahead to this part that I told you I was going to talk about. And I believe that I attended, I wasn't in this body because it was in the hospital, and apparently the wandering souls, because I wasn't there, got into the body and did crazy things, so they had to strap me down, because when I came back, I was strapped down. I don't remember how I got to the hospital. It's like before the van struck me, my vision went from light to dark. And now what I'm telling you are just like, you know, where you see a movie and you can only see a single frame? That's how I remember whatever happened to me. It's like single frames. I kind of know what's going on. But anyway, I was taken out of my body to go to a meeting, some kind of meeting that was happening in another dimension. And it was kind of like if you ever saw, not the first Star Wars movie that came out, but the first movie in the sequence, where Princess Amidala goes to the planet Trantor, and her world is being invaded, and she's asking all the people in the council, please help us, you know, we need your help. I was at a meeting like that where there were beings. That's what I can see, like beings from all over the universe. And I was there to be a representative of the earth to respond to their ideas about how to help us. Because, even now, with all the information that we have been presented about UFOs and science fiction and all our stories and everything, I still think it would be very, what's the word I want to use? People wouldn't have an easy time if an ET or galactic just materialized out of nowhere or teleports down and is standing in front of you, okay? So I think that part of the reason they had myself, and I think there were other people who agreed to do this, and I think I did agree to this before I was born. Okay, so in other words, for 3 days my body had to be taken care of, so a van struck me in a coma for 3 days, so the hospital was doing that, and I was at this meeting, and so what they were doing is going over all different kind of scenarios of how to help humanity so that we could evolve into a higher state of consciousness. Recognizing that if, like, they just came in and showed up, that this would interfere with, the normal state of us. It's kind of like Star Trek. They're not allowed to just come down and do whatever they want. That's at least the positive ones or the spiritual ones. There are some who are not so nice, obviously, and unfortunately, they've been the ones who've been influencing, I believe, the elite, the deep state, whatever you want to call it. They've been working with them together, but I believe all that's going away. And that was the reason why I was at this meeting. So what they told me is that you cannot remember, and I was begging them, gosh, if I could tell people all the things I learned and I saw while I was here, everybody would have hope, it would change everything. And they said, no, we're sorry, you're not allowed to remember. You'll only remember the essence of the meeting, but not the particulars. However, as things happen, in your reality, as it goes along in time, you will understand and know what's what, okay? So the reason I'm telling you this is, and this isn't directly connected with crystal skulls, but it's very important, is that once the pandemic started here in the United States, I'm in the Atlanta area, I knew right away that everything that they were saying about it was completely false, especially how many people have either gotten this virus or have died. This is completely, I just know it's not correct. And unfortunately, this is the scenario which the major media continues to talk about. They're locking everything down again because they said the numbers are going up. But doesn't anyone ask, where are they getting these numbers? Prove it to us. Show us where you're getting it. But nobody does. They just say, either they believe, no, this is wrong, or we just accept it, and so on. So this is one of the things that I believe I was shown that would come up. Now, since I'm talking about this, there is a way to look at this scenario. So since you're not interrupting me, I'm assuming I have permission to say this, because most of your viewers and listeners are people who are on their own spiritual path, and we chose to be here at this time, especially right now, because there are major things happening behind the scenes, which I'm just waiting for not the major media, but for different channels to start coming out and talking about it. Actually, if you go on to YouTube and watch different videos and things, basically the whole truth is being shared, both the good and the bad of what's happening. But what I saw at this meeting was that eventually there is going to be total peace on this planet. It's going to be paradise. And that eventually there had to come this time, and 2020 was the year where I think most of us knew that we were going to be seriously challenged, and that through these challenges, which would act as a catalyst, this is what's going to take us into a time of peace and harmony. Now, the other reason I know that this is true, and again, this is something that I know within my soul, it's soul memory, is time and space doesn't really exist the way we understand it here on the physical reality. Especially like when I've spoken to people through special mediums and I've talked to the spirits and I've asked them questions. My understanding is, like, when we pass away, there is no time and space. It's like you're in the simultaneous now all the time. You can go into the past, you can go into the future, you can see everything at once. Now, we can't totally comprehend this as a human being. Like if I think about various past lives I know I've had, I can be here and I can look at 3 of them, but if I bring in a 4th, I get a headache. It's too much. The vibrational frequency of looking at 4 other things happening simultaneously with what I'm doing now, I can't handle it as a human being. But the reason I'm saying this is that this guide that I have, whose name is Argus, he tells me that he's who I'm going to become in the future in this lifetime. And he says he's talking to me from 2037, 2040, this time period. And so through his eyes, I'm watching what, in my story, Crystal Skull Chronicles, which is where these 13 skulls come together that we talked about, that seems to be the catalyst or the special energy. This is what I'm offering as a possibility that shifts the world, changes the frequency. We go from 3D to 5D, and then all of a sudden we start to experience in this higher frequency of energy, you know, the love vibration, like the children through Argus eyes, the children of the future. If I was, and I will become one of their teachers, I'm sure, and I start talking about, well, here were my experiences when I lived on the earth. You know, I was born in 1955 and until today, and the people were fighting and arguing, and there was great conflicts, and they were fighting over land, over money. The children would go, Argus, what are you talking about? We don't understand this at all. This doesn't make any sense to us at all. Why would we want to harm or cause problems for our brothers and sisters? We love them all. They're children of God just like us. We're one family. So what I'm saying is through Argus eyes, I see that we're going to have this peace and harmony. But then I say, well, that's great. Can you tell me how do we get from here where we have this pandemic and now we've got these crazy things going on over the U.S. presidential election and all these different theories about stuff that's going on? No, I'm sorry, I can't tell you, because if I tell you everything that's going to happen to you, then you can't become who I am. You just have to experience it. So the reason I'm bringing it up is, could a future self, your future self, talk to your past self in order to give you insights and information? Anyway, there is a
I absolutely believe that. I've talked to spiritualists that believe that they call it haunting oneself. One man was. His name was George Fryer, and he was British, and he was talking about how he was giving a lecture, and all of a sudden a man walked in that was much older than him, but he looked at him with such familiarity, and then he realized it was him as an older man watching and communicating with him, you know, and so it's been said that you can come back to visit yourself. I don't know. It's never happened to me, but I can kind of understand what you're saying. And for you, how let me ask you this. Before I ask you about your future projects, let's say the average person goes into a spiritual shop and they see a shelf full of crystal skulls of different kinds of crystal. How do they determine which one is for them? How do they know how do they pick? How do they choose? And then how do they go about getting the spiritual messages?
Okay, so
remember, keeping it simple here.
Well, you have to trust your intuition or your feeling. Like, for example, you're looking, nothing, I feel no. Whoa, wait a second there. What's going on? And they pick it up. I don't know why, but I like this one. So it's kind of like, but at the same time, you might look at all of them and say, it's not there. The one I want's not there. So you don't know. See, it's like in a journey and an adventure. You don't know what's going to happen to you. But basically, it's like, well, we'll come back to the rose quartz skull. So, we put it on Facebook and said it's looking for its guardian and so on, and nobody answered on Facebook. And then I did another radio show with another person, Highway to Humanity, and I heard you should offer the rose quartz to her. And she's the one that's taking it. So they are picking us, we're not picking them. So it's vibration. Now, once you have the skull, so let me show you this other one I have here so you see another example. Okay, and by the way, this rose quartz, this one may be harder to see because it's so black.
Is that amethyst? Amethyst?
No, this is obsidian, rainbow obsidian.
Oh, obsidian, okay.
Yeah, now these last two are called Geronimo Juniors. And we sent to the carver in India pictures of our skull, Geronimo Golden Eagle Eye, because people felt very drawn to the Geronimo skull. So this is just another example. So now once you have the skull, then the thing is you got to spend time with it, meditate with it, take it with you. Well, it depends. If it's the size of Portal de Luz, obviously you're going to have to carry him in a bag. But there might be a special place, let's say a special energy, go and meditate, some place that you have a strong affinity for in nature, by a mountain, by a lake, a sacred site. Portal de Luz, for example, when I was in England, said, Dad, take me to the crop circles. I want to go to the crop circles. So I think we went to 3 crop circles. And I'm sure that it totally changed his vibrational frequency and energy, besides some of the interesting experiences I had when I've worked with him in crop circles. So basically, it's just going day by day. Usually the skull will give you a name too, and the name is representative of what the skull does, how it works with energy, how it'll help you. Or the skull may say to you, like Portal de Luz said to me shortly after I received him in 1999, he said, we need to start working together. We should start doing sessions together. And I said to him, are you crazy? Who's going to want to have a session with us? You're a new skull. They want these older ones. They want to have a session like with the Mitchell-Hedges skull, or Synergy, or Emit, which is on the cover of my book here. Let me show you that one, because that's an old one. See, I'm very prepared for this interview today. So I have to...
Yes, you are. Oh, that's a beautiful book.
Yeah, so this
Very
is one of our
nice.
books. Okay, so there you see Portal de Luz, and I specifically asked the artist to help me so that the new skull, Portal de Luz, is facing an older skull, because they work together. And they tell me, it doesn't matter if I'm new or old. We're all here. We all have a special energy. Depends on the person. So anyway, that's Emit. This is made out of amethyst quartz, and that's an old skull that was found in Mexico. The
What
key
was
is
the name of that book again, Joshua?
This book is called Journeys of the Crystal Skull Explorers. I have to see which one. Travel log number 2, Search for the Blue Skull in Peru, which we probably don't have time to explain what the blue skull is about, because we have some other
We have
things.
about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So what is the year that was published?
It came out in 2 versions. The first version, I think, was 2011 or 12, and then I redid it in 2018. I updated it, so that's the new
And is
version.
that messages that you've received from the skulls, or is it just your journey with the skulls, or all of the above?
It is suicide for an author to write a book like this, because it talks about a crystal skull, which I have only seen in visions, and it's sitting there in the air above me all the time, that I did not see physically, but I had a lot of communication from it. So it's, a typical Aries story, the journey to Peru looking for a blue transparent sky blue skull. And there was a lot of, it's over 300 pages.
Did you find it? Did you find the sky blue skull?
I have not seen it in the physical, although I believe I went to the area
Beautiful.
where it is, but it's in another dimension. And it says it cannot come into our dimension because we're not ready for it yet. It's too powerful. So anyway, you would have to read that book. Anyway, before we leave, I'll give out the website and also talk about the 3 ebooks and so on. But coming back to your question, which again, I forgot what it was because I got carried
Well,
away.
it's just how would the average person go and pick out a skull, a crystal skull, first realizing the skulls are not about black magic or about,
No,
like you said, this. That's not what the skull
no,
shape is about, which I think is very, a lot of people misinterpret.
yeah,
And the skull is more about the ability to resonate frequencies and energy much like our own, and the ability to resonate like we would vibrations of singing or vocalizing, but vocalizing energy. And so what you're doing is picking a cranium shaped beautiful tool for receiving messages, and you're going to wait until you feel a gut feeling that you are communicating or connecting with that specific skull, correct?
right. Right, and it may not be
And
messages. It may be healing. It may be
okay,
activating
there you
your
go.
gifts. You know,
The different
everybody is
frequencies,
different.
yeah.
There's no way to
Yeah.
predict it. The key is once you make the connection, and this is what I tell people, the skull will find a way to communicate with you, and then you will have your relationship, and then you won't bother talking to Katrina or Joshua because you'll be on your own adventure and you'll have your communication. And if you trust what the skull is suggesting, then it will help you to find your greatness. So, in other words, they are returning now. This is what Emit told me. Emit was the first one that I saw. And when I saw that skull, and it was only through its picture first before I saw it in the physical and touched it on the top part of the skull, it said to me, we are returning to help humanity to create peace. Okay? And so that's ultimately what I think about. So first, they're empowering us to remember who we are, divine children of God and our gifts. And secondly, eventually there will probably be some group of skulls and guardians who will come together, and if it goes according to Crystal Skull Chronicles, that becomes the moment that literally shifts and lifts the planet into 5D. That is the combination of their energy with the individuals working with, because in my story, they literally have all these indigenous people in a circle with 13 skulls, one in the center, 12 around, and they're working together, and the skulls create this beautiful energy that comes out of them and covers the planet, and every energy of hate and violence just instantly disappears. Like I say in the book, you know, the Israeli is fighting the Arab, and then all of a sudden they go, what am I doing? This is my brother, and they hug each other, instantaneously shifting the planet into a peaceful vibration. So this is a possibility, not saying that that's totally what they're about, but they have the potential. And if I can think this story, then there has to be at least a parallel Earth where the coming together of the skulls actually helps to create that. Because anything that we can imagine, we can only imagine it if it already exists somewhere in God's infinite universe. This is one of the messages that I was told. The other message that came to me is I asked inwardly and said, well, what does God or Creator receive from each of us? We're so minute compared to the immensity of this loving being that creates everything. And I heard your experiences, of course, which means that through being who we are, which we're all perfect, regardless of our strengths and weaknesses, Creator receives and becomes more by experiencing who we are. So nothing is right or wrong. We're just being who we are. So make the best of it. Do the things that you love that make your heart sing. Okay? And that's how that's the world of the future.
I want to be sure to not cut you off short. I do have about 4 minutes left. How should people, especially those of us on our own spiritual path, deal with the events to come?
Do not come from fear and panic. Definitely stop listening to the major media and just see a vision or send out the love vibration. I'm telling you, we're going to hear about events very soon in a very positive way that's changing everything. There's a war on consciousness going on right now, and it's not coming out publicly yet, but that's what I saw when I was at this meeting. And it's going to be great So we don't really need to worry about anything. Just be yourself, be kind, send out love. If other people are open and you see something that you believe is true, share it with them, but don't expect they're going to believe you. I've lost some friends because whatever's going on now is really dividing us. Some people say,
Oh, it's
no,
very
you
much,
must have
very
the mask.
much.
You must
Yeah.
have the mask. And the mask is the worst thing that you can do. And now they're saying in certain parts you can't go outside without it, and then they'll find you. I saw a lady arrested on a video in Australia because she was too far from her house without the mask. This is crazy. But what it's showing us is what's really going on behind the scene and what we're getting rid of, because we are going to have peace by 2037, 2040. Since I only have a little time.
Joshua, I understand you have free books to offer on the special messages. Where can people go to contact you and to receive those?
Right. So send me an email at crystalskullexplorers@gmail.com, or our website is cse.crystalskullexplorers.com. But the best way to contact me is through the email. I have 3 free ebooks, Crystal Skulls, The World is a Computer Simulation, and the messages that Argus gave me because he wrote through me in 1996 and 1997, and more about the meeting that I was at. So I'm sending these free ebooks out to whoever asks me for them.
And is there any prayer or any words of mysticism, like a prayer, a small meditation that, well, I think we're running out of time. It's 6 o'clock here, but a short prayer that you say to yourself.
Everything is in divine perfection at every moment.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Joshua.
My
We
pleasure.
really appreciate you being here.
My pleasure. Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. God bless, peace and light always.
Thank you.